Hey, 42 here. If you've ever moved to a new town or city, you'll know how difficult it can be to make friends. Traditional advice is to sign up to some kind of group or club where you can meet like-minded people. You could take a pottery class, join a wine appreciation society, or become a member of the local glee club. I, for one, have made lifelong friends in the Illuminati. If you're the more adventurous type, though, you might consider joining a spy ring. A secret clique of agents who live under false identities and meet in clandestine locations to exchange top-secret information and tips on the latest disguises. One man who took this route was William Siebold, a German-American who, in 1940, joined what would become the biggest spy ring in US history. Siebold had recently returned to America after a couple of years in his native country of Germany, but if you'd met him in those days, he would have introduced himself as Harry Sawyer, a diesel engineer. That alias had been given to him by the Gestapo, who'd cornered Siebold during his visit to Germany and politely encouraged him to begin spying on his adopted nation, the United States. As most people did after a chat with a bunch of high-ranking Nazis threatening to murder their entire family, Siebold agreed. Over the following few weeks, he was trained in his newfound profession before being shipped back to the States to begin collecting intelligence on behalf of the Führer. What Hitler and his cronies didn't know, though, was that Siebold had no intention of doing their bidding. Whilst being trained in Germany, he visited the American consulate in Cologne in secret, explaining his situation and offering to become a double agent working with the FBI. When Siebold returned to New York in February 1940, the FBI helped him set up a new life as Harry Sawyer, including office space where he'd carry out his work as an engineer. Or at least that was the cover story. The real purpose of the premises was to act as a meeting place for Siebold and other German spies. The offices were rigged with hidden cameras and microphones, and it was Siebold's job to get his fellow spies talking, with the FBI watching and listening in. Siebold didn't know it at the time, but the clandestine operation was about to bring him face to face with one of the most accomplished spies and all-around interesting people in history. His name was Frederick, or Fritz, Joubert Duquesne, and he was pretty much the leading German spy operating in the US at the time. Spying on the Americans was one of the final assignments in what was a truly remarkable life. Seriously, this guy makes James Bond look like a stamp-collecting geography teacher. If you Google Fritz Joubert Duquesne, many of the images you will find are of a man wearing different hats. Literally. But Fritz wore many metaphorical hats too, including South African Boer, conman, journalist, movie publicist, big game hunter, German soldier, British army officer, fictitious Australian war hero, hippo salesman, hunting advisor to President Roosevelt, and of course, spy. Yes, that list did include hippo salesman. Can you imagine the ads? Only one owner, runs well, low mileage, a real head turner, but a bit heavy on fuel and handling can be a bugger. In the course of his rich and colourful life, Duquesne went by many names and aliases. At one point, he even assumed the identity of a real-life Russian duke. That's why he's referred to as the Duke in FBI files. But other military code names included Dunn and the Black Panther. He fought in multiple wars, being caught and imprisoned 6 times and sentenced to death at least once. But he escaped every single time. Duquesne was born in 1877 into a Boer family in South Africa. The Boers being a nation of pioneers and farmers who left the Cape Colony of South Africa, where European settlement began, and migrated to settle in the interior of the South African wilderness. His family lived on a farm in the middle of nowhere, and young Fritz became a hunter like his father. At the clearly not so tender age of 12, Duquesne killed a Zulu tribesman who'd attacked his mother with the tribesman's own spear. Having displayed such powerful survival instincts, Fritz was apparently judged to be ready for school in England, which is where he went next. Like so much of his later life, details of what Duquesne did after school are sketchy, but we do know that he returned to his homeland at the turn of the 20th century to fight against the British in the Second Boer War. One of his missions was to deliver a shipment of gold to a port in what is present-day Mozambique. This precious cargo was being sent to a group of exiled Boers, including then-President of South Africa, Paul Kruger. An argument broke out amongst the Boers escorting Duquesne's shipment, and soon blows were being traded. When the dust settled, only Duquesne, 2 wounded Boers, and some local porters were left alive. Rumour has it that Fritz finished off the 2 remaining Boers, ordered the porters to torch the wagons, and hid the gold in a cave before riding off into the sunset on an ox, as you do. To this day, the missing gold has never been recovered, so if you're looking for a dramatic career change and happen to own a metal detector, maybe Mozambique's the place to go. During the course of the war, Duquesne was captured 3 times by the British, and 3 times he escaped. When he and his men retreated to Portuguese East Africa, he was captured by the Portuguese too, and imprisoned near Lisbon. Again, he escaped before finding his way to England, where, with a false ID and presumably a ridiculous accent, he enlisted as an officer in the British Army. By 1901, he was on his way back to South Africa. Once there, he discovered that his family farm had been razed to the ground, in line with the scorched earth policy implemented by the British leader, Lord Kitchener. Duquesne learnt his mother had been put into a concentration camp, whilst his sister had been raped and murdered by British soldiers. Fritz was, unsurprisingly, not best pleased with this turn of events, and so he and 19 accomplices conspired to exact their revenge by assassinating Lord Kitchener. But before they had the chance to carry out their plan, they were sold out by one of the conspirators' wives. All 20 men were sentenced to death by firing squad, but Fritz literally dodged a bullet when he offered to reveal Boer military codes in exchange for a stay of execution. His reward was a life sentence in the ironically named Castle of Good Hope in Cape Town, where he attempted to escape using the time-honoured spoon-digging technique. He almost made it too, but when his plan failed, he was sent to serve the rest of his sentence in a jail in Bermuda. Fritz soon added that prison to his list of great escapes when he scaled a barbed wire fence, swam almost 2.5 kilometers through shark-ridden seas, and avoided patrol boats and searchlights on his way to safety. From there, he travelled to the USA, where he would settle, never to return to South Africa. In America, Duquesne supported himself as a journalist, even writing several novels, before being recruited as an expert on African wildlife by a congressman trying to address the national meat shortage by passing the American Hippo Bill of 1911, which aims to introduce hippo meat as a staple of the American diet. The New York Times tried to dress things up a bit by calling hippo meat lake cow bacon. But in the end, the bill wasn't passed, so Americans never got a chance to find out just how good, or bad, the LCBLT sandwiches might have been. It was around this time that Duquesne became acquainted with Theodore Roosevelt, joining the American president on a hunting safari in East Africa as his personal shooting instructor. In 1913, Duquesne became a naturalized American citizen, so it seemed he was a Yankee through and through. But as anyone who's spoken to a pretty girl in Thailand will tell you, things aren't always what they seem. When war broke out in 1914, Fritz lived up to his name and became a German spy. Working in South America, he sank 22 British merchant ships by planting bombs in their cargo holds. When British intelligence caught on to him, he fled to Argentina and attempted to fake his own death by publishing an article in a local newspaper describing his murder at the hands of Amazonian tribespeople in Bolivia. When the heat had died down, he slipped past British intelligence and returned to New York in May 1916 using an assumed identity. Showing a pair of balls as big as melons, Duquesne had insured cargo on the very ships he'd blown up. When they sank, as he obviously knew they would, seeing as he was the one who planted the bombs, he tried to claim on the insurance. But when the insurance company finished an investigation into the whole affair, Fritz was arrested on fraud. That was 1917, and Duquesne was making money on the lecture circuit, pretending to be a decorated Australian war hero called Captain Storkton. He claimed to have seen more war than anyone around, and to have survived being bayoneted 3 times, gassed 4, and stuck with a hook once. But not even Crocodile Dundee could escape the clutches of an insurance company, and eventually Fritz was nabbed for his crimes. To make things worse, when he was arrested, the authorities found damning evidence linking him to the cargo ship bombings. The British were keen to prosecute him, and Duquesne was set to be extradited to the UK to face serious charges. But showing an unbelievable amount of patience, resourcefulness, and some great acting, Duquesne pulled off yet another great escape. He feigned paralysis in his right leg for 2 years, convincing both his jailers and doctors that he was truly lame. As a result, Fritz was sent to the prison ward of Bellevue Hospital, and from there he escaped, dressed as a woman, just a few days before his scheduled extradition. Duquesne went to ground in Mexico, and later Europe, but returned to New York in 1926 with yet another identity and a new career as a movie publicist. He was good at it too, even doing some work for Joseph Kennedy, the father of JFK. But that success came at a price. Duquesne was a notorious criminal wanted by the police, and the more well-known he became through his work, the greater the chances of someone recognizing him. It took 6 years, but eventually someone realized who Duquesne really was and alerted the FBI. He was arrested again, but this time released on a technicality. In the mid-1930s, with another war looming, Fritz was approached by German intelligence and got to building a spy ring that would eventually number more than 30 operatives. These agents were mostly made up of low-profile types who infiltrated many different industries, including aviation, engineering, and shipping, and they provided invaluable information to the German leadership. By this time, Duquesne was extremely experienced and was known to be very careful about being followed and observed. But even he didn't see the trap that had been laid for him by the FBI, and the man we met at the start of the story, William Siebold, aka Harry Sawyer. When the men first met Duquesne, he was cagey, but just like the rest of the Nazi spies in his circle, he eventually revealed all kinds of secrets and sensitive information in Siebold's camera-rigged office. The FBI meticulously filmed, recorded, and investigated the spy ring for 2 years, building up a rock-solid case. And in June 1941, the FBI arrested Duquesne and 32 German spies in the largest ever American espionage case that led to convictions. 19 of the operatives pleaded guilty immediately, and 14 were convicted later. The group received over 300 years of jail time between them, with Fritz earning 18 of his own. There was no escape for Duquesne this time, and he served 14 years of his term before being released on grounds of ailing health. He would deliver his final public talk, titled My Life in and Out of Prison, at the Adventurers Club in New York in 1954, before passing away 2 years later at the age of 77. With a life so full of guts, glory, crime, and intrigue, who knows what he would have chosen to include in that speech? But I like to think Hippo's got a mention. Thanks for watching.